Today, we're going to explore a truly disturbing and gory reality from the Marvel multiverse. Hello everyone, welcome to #Recaps channel. A little warning before we start, there will be some quite violent images and especially some rather disturbing themes. You've been warned. Let's go. The plot revolves around an ordinary individual named Philip Sheldon, a veteran journalist from the Daily Bugle in reality 95,991. This reality is distinguished by the fact that the usual powers of superheroes have led to extremely violent side effects on them. It's a rather unique story, sometimes even devoid of logic, as we are only confronted with a succession of truly disturbing events. So, it's not the best story, but it has the merit of being told. Philip decides to travel across the country, the United States, to investigate and report on this phenomenon of superheroes and their powers, but especially to understand why everything is going wrong with the heroes of Earth, with the aim of writing a book. In this reality, Professor X, or Xavier, is not an X-Man nor the leader of the X-Men. He is the president of the country, known simply as President X, and he is a sort of violent dictator. But from this dictatorship, a group of revolutionaries wishing to separate California from the rest of the country and its government was born. Among the rebels is philanthropist Tony Stark, who wishes to ease tensions between the two camps but ends up being hit by a grenade during a confrontation between the American government and the rebels. It is at this moment that he becomes Iron Man, and with the help of Hank Pym and Doctor Strange, who is a sort of cult guru in this reality, he creates the famous Avengers team to collectively oppose the government. Over time, other members join the group, such as the Wasp, Captain America, Thor, etc. However, one day during a confrontation, while they are all aboard a Quinjet, it is destroyed in mid-flight by American soldiers, killing all the Avengers present inside, including Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, etc. No one survives. Philip Sheldon, present at that moment, witnesses their death and the joy of the American soldiers for having killed the Avengers. After this event, while wandering the streets of the city reading the newspaper, he comes across sensational news, the death of a certain Matt Murdock, who died in tragic circumstances, a victim of a terrible accident involving a truck transporting radioactive materials. This is, of course, a reference to Daredevil's origin, except that in this reality, he died burned alive. After deciding to go to a bar to relax and have a drink, he meets a frightening and deformed individual who threatens to kill him if he doesn't buy him a drink. The bartender reassures him by explaining that it's just a grumpy individual. It is then that this man reveals himself to be Wolverine, following a failed experiment due to the injection of adamantium into his body. This condition has led to the degradation of his bones and skin, causing a slow decomposition of his flesh. Subsequently, Sheldon informs us of the fate of various heroes, such as Wanda, formerly a member of the Avengers, who betrayed her former allies by revealing their secrets in exchange for government protection. This betrayal had dramatic consequences for her former allies, as it allowed the government to track down and eliminate the Avengers aboard the Quinjet. Subsequently, they captured and imprisoned Black Panther in a prison in San Francisco. Clint Barton, also known as Hawkeye, was coldly executed with a bullet to the head in a public square, all because of Wanda. After staying in California, Philip then goes to Nevada to visit a concentration camp populated by Kree to obtain information about their presence. Philip decides to interview one of them, but must first put on a radiation suit because the camp was built on a nuclear test site. The consequence of this is that all the Kree imprisoned have been irradiated over the years, developing cancers. Once inside the camp, Sheldon meets Marvel, the Kree leader, who explains how he and his species arrived on Earth years ago. The Kree had come to annihilate Earth to force it to join the Kree Empire. However, as they approached Earth discreetly with their fleet of invisible ships, the Kree discovered the body of the Silver Surfer, who had gone mad for no apparent reason and had shredded his body. We don't have more information on this. The thing is, as they approached the body, it disrupted all the technology of the Kree fleet due to the cosmic force emanating from the corpse, which had the effect of disabling their camouflage, allowing Earth to retaliate with nuclear missiles, decimating the entire Kree fleet. The survivors, including Marvel, were subsequently transported to Earth and confined in the irradiated concentration camp on President X's orders. Marvel explains that they have been imprisoned for many years and have all contracted cancer due to the radiation, with only 1 in 8 children surviving birth, also inheriting cancer early on. The soldiers refused to treat them or even take care of the corpses, forcing the Kree to incinerate the bodies in their living quarters. In addition to cancer, all the Kree in the camp suffer from bone and skin burns, emitting a rather disgusting white liquid from their bodies. Following this interview, Sheldon now goes to Washington, D.C., which is no longer the magnificent and imposing city of the United States, as President X, upon taking office, moved the White House to Westchester County, leaving the city of Washington to sink into crime and misery. Once arrived in the former capital of the country, Sheldon organizes a meeting with another known personality, Colonel Nick Fury, who still thinks he is a member of a government agency, although he is actually homeless. The latter then asks him why he is wasting his life traveling through a country that he believes is doomed. Sheldon explains that he plans to write a book about all these events involving the heroes, but Fury quickly attacks Sheldon violently, accusing him of being a spy for the president. However, Sheldon defends himself, arguing that it has nothing to do with it and that he only wanted to meet him because he knew Captain America and wanted to discuss it. Fury, who seems completely insane, points his gun at Sheldon but shoots a stray dog instead, killing it, then sits on its corpse, sharing an anecdote with Sheldon for his book. He is a cannibal. You understood correctly. Nick Fury enjoys human flesh and claims to have been initiated into this practice by Captain America during World War II, where the latter loved eating Germans. At the same time, a woman interrupts them, claiming to be Jean Grey, who is usually an X-Man, but in this reality, she has become a prostitute offering her services to Fury for $20. But the latter then points his gun at her and shoots without hesitation, killing her on the spot. He then burns her body, places his gun under his chin, and shoots himself. Indescribable, they are all really crazy in this universe. After this troubling event, Sheldon goes to Chicago to continue his research for his book, meeting this time a certain Rick Jones, a drug addict living in a squat with what seems to be his girlfriend. The latter then recounts his story to the writer about an event that happened several years ago. While he was peacefully in the desert playing the guitar, he saw a man on a motorcycle speeding towards him, wearing a white coat. The man tried to quickly warn Rick to leave as soon as possible, and then a nearby water tower started sparking. The man, apparently from that place, alerted Rick that it was a bomb, revealing that he was actually on the test site of a new bomb, the Gamma bomb. Before he could act, Rick was pushed into a trench by the man who took the full force of the explosion. Well, you guessed it. This man in the white coat, and this story is Bruce Banner, having saved Rick Jones from the gamma explosion as in the main Hulk story. However, we are in a reality where everything goes wrong because instead of simply transforming into Hulk, Bruce metamorphoses into a mass of tumors, completely tearing his body and organs apart, causing explosions of blood and pus. He is nothing but a cancerous mass. Rick then recounts that government agents intervened to capture the monster, incarcerating it in a complex under a lake under the code name Hulk. Despite Bruce's rescue, Rick, having been too exposed to this monstrosity, also developed cancer due to gamma radiation. Since then, he tries to ease his pain with morphine, which has made him dependent and plunged him into madness. He even violently attacks his girlfriend, hitting her to the ground for speaking to him rudely. After learning about this story, Sheldon leaves the squad and begins to gradually feel disturbing effects on his health, without specifying the nature of these effects. He then stumbles upon the corpse of the Punisher, killed by several bullets in the head and body, lying in the street. That's gratuitous. Later, we find the journalist, this time on a plane to Texas, sitting next to a woman, but suddenly she loses control and undergoes a painful and disgusting transformation, as we are used to. It turns out that this woman is the mutant Raven, who over the years has developed personality disorders from taking on different people's appearances. She had to take pills to feel better, but this time she hadn't taken them, causing the sudden emergence of all these personalities, leading to the explosion of her brain. Once the plane landed, government agents intervened to take her body. The thing is, the airport is targeted by protesters demanding the end of President X's dictatorship. To clear the way, an agent violently pushes one of the protesters, who turns out to be the mutant Magneto. Remember, as I mentioned earlier, on this Earth, every transformation comes with an undesirable side effect. In Magneto's case, his body generates magnetic fields without his control, attracting all magnetic objects towards him. He had therefore designed a device to neutralize this magnetic field, but when the agent pushed him, the device was damaged, triggering the magnetic field and attracting all nearby magnetic objects, including the iron in the blood of people nearby. I didn't know that was possible. Eventually, a plane on the runway crashed into him and everyone around, destroying the airport. After this event, Philip goes to a rather peculiar prison where all the mutants in the country are detained on President X's orders. There, during the visit with the prison director, Wilson Fisk, Sheldon discovers many mutilated and tortured mutants, again on the president's orders, to appropriate their powers. Among them is Cyclops, whose eyes were gouged out to prevent him from using his beam after he killed his own family. Fisk also introduces him to other mutants, such as Nightcrawler, who is cannibalizing himself, Kitty Pryde, who tried to escape using her phasing powers but got stuck between two elements, leading to her being cut in half to free her and put her back in prison. We also find Quicksilver, or Pietro, whose forelimbs were amputated to prevent any escape attempts. It's very grim. After gathering as much information as possible, Sheldon goes that evening to a sort of carnival where he discovers a man on a motorcycle with a terribly scarred face. He realizes that for the show, the man calling himself Johnny Blaze pours gasoline on his head and sets it on fire while performing a motorcycle stunt before dying burned alive, screaming through the desert. After his stay in Texas, Sheldon heads to Canada where he meets Ben Grimm, also known as the Thing from the Fantastic Four, but in this reality, he hasn't undergone any transformation. He explains to Sheldon that he refused to join his friends on a space expedition, referring to the moment when the Fantastic Four gained their powers from cosmic radiation exposure in space. In this reality, Ben declined the offer due to fear of potential dangers. Unfortunately, his companions Reed Richards, Johnny Storm, and Susan Storm still undertook the journey and were affected by the radiation, which reduced their bodies and flesh to ashes. Thus, the Fantastic Four never existed in this world, and Ben, consumed by guilt over their deaths, found refuge in Canada. After taking photos and gathering as much information as possible during his travels, Sheldon decides to return to New York to start writing his book titled Marvel. However, on the way, he feels increasingly unwell, suffering from symptoms seemingly caused by a hand injury. Unbeknownst to anyone, Sheldon has actually been dying since the beginning of the story. Just before his departure across the country, he shook hands with Peter Parker at the Daily Bugle, not knowing that Peter had been experimenting on a spider to then let it bite him to gain powers. But instead of becoming Spider-Man, he developed a highly contagious mutant virus that completely transformed Peter into a mass of putrid flesh. But before that, he had inadvertently transmitted the mutant virus to Sheldon by shaking his hand. This virus then evolved into cancer, and before he could even finish writing his book, Philip Sheldon collapses in the street and suddenly succumbs to the disease. The end.